Hello, and welcome to the channel. Today, I'd like to discuss how prayers work in Norse Paganism. I bring this up because a group of mine ended up getting into a rather heated discussion about whether or not we should pray at all. Naturally, being religious sorts, most said yes. There were one or two who said no. They gave their side of the story as one of them saying, well, we should treat the gods as equals, and other obscenities like that, which I will not get into. Now, prayer is definitely a part of even ancient pagan religions. How do we pray as pagans? Well, it is actually really simple. There are three parts. The first one is you acknowledging the God. You have to know exactly what you're praying for first in order to bring about the deity in question. Let's say you were praying for strength. A good friend of mine is actually doing a strength competition. If he wanted to pray, he would do so to Thor, the god of strength. The way he would do so is he would say something around the lines of Thor, Thunderer, Protector, God of Strength, and then he would go into what he expects of the deity, and then what he can give in return, usually in the form of offering. I, for example, tend to offer alcohol. I use harder things for male gods, and wines usually for goddesses. That's just me. Now, what might work for one person may not work for another. So, again, harder alcohols and wines work for me. That is just what I use, and that's worked for me for a while. Now, what works for you could be certain other things, such as coppers or silvers or certain flowers for specific deities. For example, Earth is usually associated with white flowers and copper. Those would be good offerings to make to her as well. Now, most deities we don't really have much of a idea of what to offer them. There have been a few videos on the topic, but I'll make my own anyway. What would I offer to a deity such as Skathi? Well, she is a huntress. You would likely offer something that, a part of something that you hunted, or the blood of something that you hunted, something along those lines. Who is Skathi? For those who don't know yet, she's the goddess of winter and hunting. I'll go into a longer definition video on her later on. Now, the three parts of a pagan prayer being the god you want to invoke. For example, Thor. You'd also use their kenning in the second part, a kenning being a type of title. In this case, it was Thunderer, Protector, God of Strength. Then you would get into what do I expect from you? In such a case, it would be, I expect you, Thor, to lend me the strength that I need to do well in this competition. I know he watches these videos, and I'm fairly certain he's going to watch this one, so if you were looking for a way to prayer, my dear friend, this is a good way to start. Although you can make your own as you go. Then you would get into what you can do for them. Gods such as Thor and Tyr are more action or materialistic item types. So instead of specific offerings, you could do devotional acts to them. A devotional act is doing something for a god in terms of active service, usually to yourself or the greater good. A great example of this would be doing well in that competition, or even competing in that competition. Now, if you wanted to do an offering, you could give Thor ales, Mead's meats. He likes ox, as we can see in the story where he steals his hammer back from Thrym. I'll go into that story later as well. Now, how would all of this look in a prayer setting? No, you don't need an altar. You don't. Although, it is nice to have one. You don't have to say the words aloud. You can say them in your head as well. That's just fine. Now, here's what a structured prayer would look like. Let's say I was trying to make an offering to Tyr, which I have. It would be something around the lines of Tyr, god of justice, the foster father of the wolf, the son of Odin, he whose judgment is resound. I pray to you for courage, for the ability to go on, for etc., for the justice of this one particular conflict, for example. Now, what can I give to Tyr? Tyr, as I have found, tends to like vodka. You can use that if you want to. Gods also drink mead, at least in Norse Paganism. That's also a good idea. If you're looking for sources for meads that you don't have locally sourced, there is a website called Groennfell. I'll type that in the description. They make good stuff. You can drink it yourself if you want to. It's not all just for the gods. Now, let's restructure that prayer into a way that would help my dear friend. As an example, and I'm sure he doesn't mind if I use him as an example. Now, in order to structure this, you would have to go in that 3-step order, specifically. So, for my dear friend, it would be Thor, Thunderer, Protector, God of Strength. Lend me the ability to get through this competition, to strike well in the hearts of these men and women of the audience and the judges. I give unto you this great action, this feat. Or if you were doing an offering, it would be, I give unto you this alcohol, this ox, this other type of meat. There you can close out with some sort of sentimental sentence if you'd like to. You don't have to, again. You could just leave it at that. Anyway, that is how we pray, or how we are supposed to pray. In older examples, there are also, most of the time, people who would get down on one knee when they would pray to their gods. Yes, even pagans did this. Even in Norse culture, we did this. We would kneel to the gods as we prayed to them. It is not strictly a Christian thing to do. It is not strictly an Abrahamic thing to do at all. Now, what does that mean for those of us who don't pray? There are those pagans who don't pray. That's just fine. Nobody is going to tell you how to worship or how to express your belief. If you want to simply wear a hammer as an expression of your belief, you are more than allowed to. Or a ring, or an oath ring, or something like that. Wear tattoos to express your faith, whatever you would feel like doing. You can also, in historical texts, they were called godless ones. I forget the Norse terminology for it, but it was someone who, instead of viewing the gods as actual gods, rather saw them as variations of themselves, or found themselves, the gods, to be within themselves. I was like this for a very long time. And instead of praying outright, you would do devotional acts to yourself and to the betterment of others, specifically whatever your community is, if you have a community. There is no absolute requirement to pray to the gods. You don't have to. Even in Beowulf, the man himself states that none should trust too much in the gods, for they do not put their favor into those who cannot do things for themselves. That's the simplified version of it, but that's essentially what he says. So, if you want to be more attuned to yourself than with the gods, you don't have to pray. Nobody is going to force you to do so. In any event, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll have me on your journey.